Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us here at Glasgow Science Centre for our Curious About live sessions. My name is Gillian, and I'm really excited to be here today as we are going to be meeting Jess Wise. And Jess is a Discovery and Learning Programme Manager at the Royal Zoological Society Scotland, Highland Wildlife Park. Jess is going to be introducing us to a couple of animals who live at the park. There's also time for a quiz. And after Jess's presentation, I will have the chance to ask Jess your questions. So if you are watching us live and there's anything at all you'd like to know, please send any and all questions through to us via our YouTube chat box, and we'll get through as many as we can. But it is time for me to say hello to Jess. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning, Gillian. And I'm going to introduce you to Sophia, one of our lovely keepers, but also Jack and Sarah, our two Arctic foxes who are being wonderful this morning already. We prepped them that they had a very important job to talk to you all this morning. And Sophia's going to pop out a puzzle feeder for them, hopefully to keep them interested.
So it's just a dog puzzle feeder. So it's quite strong for their strong teeth, so it won't break too easily. So they have to spin it to get the pieces of an apple and carrot are inside it. So they've got to spin it to get it out.
So hopefully we'll have them on screen for a little bit longer. But while we're watching them, and I'll just let them get set up, I'm going to tell you a bit more about this absolutely amazing species. So they are called Arctic foxes. And here we have Jack, who's on the platform, and Sarah, who's just coming up. And these guys live in the Arctic, as their name suggests. So they live at the top of the world in some of the most extreme environments. They can live in conditions down to -40 degrees. So today it's probably around freezing with me here. And I've got to tell you, my fingers are a little bit tingly already. But the Arctic foxes, for them, they're not even blinking an eye at that. It takes several more tens of degrees colder before they'd even start to think that, oh, this is a little bit chilly. And that's because they are so perfectly adapted to their environment. They have evolved to live in these conditions and be absolutely fine and thrive in deep snow, thick, icy conditions. So if you're looking at them, you can see they are a fox species, so similar to sort of the urban foxes, the red foxes that you'd see in the towns and villages and countryside maybe near you, but they're a bit smaller. Their ears are a little bit smaller, their legs are a little bit shorter, and that helps them conserve heat in their body. They don't lose as much heat to the environment because they have a more compact shape. Where are they headed? I'll try to keep them in the background. So you'll notice that their ears in particular, that's what a lot of people see. Their ears aren't anywhere near as sort of long and pointy as the red foxes that we'd see here. And they've got a really thick, bushy tail. And all of this helps keep them warm in some of the most extreme environments on Earth. I'm going to turn my camera around actually so that you can get rid of my face in the corner and have a better look at these guys. Here we go. They also, you can see they're different colours. And Arctic foxes, one of my favourite facts about them is that actually they're kind of like chameleons. They change colour to better suit their environment throughout the year. So their skin underneath, their skin is black, and that probably helps keep them warm. Black absorbs the sunlight that they'd have in the Arctic to keep them warm. But their fur on the outside switches between an almost a brilliant white to a sort of more mottled grey, sometimes known as blue colour. And this helps them camouflage. So they are predators. They live mainly on sort of small mammals and birds, but what they'll eat changes. You can see Sarah getting right into the puddle feeder there. Changes what they eat in the wild changes throughout the year. In the summer months, in the warmer months, they'd maybe eat more like birds, like eggs, maybe like ptarmigan, just like we have here in Scotland. But in the winter, when it's really thick snow, they'll hunt lemmings, and that's their favorite food, which are like small rodents. They look a little bit like hamsters. And they are absolutely incredible hunters. So even when the snow is super thick, like maybe 1 meter deep, These Arctic foxes can hear the lemmings' footsteps under the snow. Lemmings travel throughout their environment through little tunnels that they've made underneath the snow, and the foxes can hear that. And just like maybe you'll see with your dogs at home, where they do the sort of really adorable head tilt, doing that helps the Arctic foxes pinpoint exactly where the lemmings are. And they'll jump up in the air, sometimes several feet in the air, and then pounce, going straight through that snow and straight to the lemming below, who has no idea what's happening, and one minute was happily trundling along a tunnel, and next minute was an Arctic fox snack. But it's just as well that they're amazing hunters, because Arctic foxes, despite their small size, have one of the largest litters in the animal kingdom. Actually, they have the most babies of any mammal species. This tiny fox can have up to 20 babies. Sarah, who's on the platform there, she was born here at the park, and she was one of 10. And we are hoping that Jack and Sarah will have babies of their own, maybe even this year. It would be their first litter, and Jack's a few years younger, so maybe he needs a couple of years to kind of get into it, but we'll wait to see how many babies we have here, because they need to be able to feed between sort of 5 and 20 babies in the wild, and living in that really extreme Arctic condition means that they need to be really good at hunting, because food might be few and far between. In the wild, they'll live in social groups, they'll live within their family groups, and they'll live in what's called a sort of alpine tundra environment. And that looks a lot like the habitat that you can see here at Highland Wildlife Park. Ah, Sophia's just flagging up.
Interested in smelling her, and he's making a call. So that's like a mating behaviour.
Sophia's just telling me that what you can see at the moment, that sort of sniffing, that sort of turning around, and actually we could hear a call. That's Jack interested in Sarah. So fingers crossed for some little Arctic fox pups later in the year. But you can see that in this area, they've got lots of places to climb, to hide, to burrow beneath. And that's just like what they'd have in their wild environment in the tundra. They'd live in sort of cave systems in some places, where it might go several meters back into a rock face, and generations, so family after family of Arctic foxes, will live in these environments. And so they're a really important part of the ecosystems that they are found in. They're a really important predator, keeping those rodent species under control, but also they scavenge for food, and they can roam hundreds of kilometers following polar bears to get an easy meal, really. But Arctic foxes, as you might have guessed, living in that sort of environment, they're threatened by things like global warming. So we can all play a part in helping protect them in the wild. If we can reduce our footprint, and that means maybe eating more local food, or turning off light switches if we're not using them, or maybe walking or cycling instead of getting the car on short journeys, we're helping species like Arctic foxes by protecting their environments. They need to have that ice cover, that snow, in order to keep the camouflage effective. I'm going to move around this way. They've headed behind the hill. Oh, here comes Sarah. And so they will change colour, and they'll be influenced by the daylight hours. Actually, that's their signal. And so if the daylight hours are still changing, but there's no snow, they aren't as well adapted, as well suited to their environment as they are at the moment. And that can have all sorts of challenges for them. They can't hunt as well. Well, they're getting all shy now. They can't hunt as well, and they can't fit into their environment. And there are things like wolves or like polar bears that might want to eat Arctic foxes. So it's really important for them to be able to catch their prey, but to be also keep safe themselves, to be the right colour at the right time of year. Now, we're going to head to a quick quiz, because it's not just Arctic foxes that, here comes Jack, that are colour changing magicians. And I want to know sort of what you think, and what native species you think might do the same thing. So Gillian, do you have some slides and some questions ready for us?
I do. Yeah, thank you so much for that. I can't believe all the activity we got to see there.
I know.
Absolutely. I have a
Jack's
quiz.
being a little star. Yeah.
He's definitely knows something's going on. I have the slides, I have the quiz, and I've got a timer. So for all of you watching live, please call out the answers wherever you are. So first question being, why might animals change colour? Is it A, temperature control, B, for camouflage, C, for communication, D, to attract a mate, or is it E, all of the above? And you have got 10 seconds to answer. You could call it out. Just tell
Shout out in your
ChatGPT who you're with
classes, yeah.
too. Yeah. So give us the answer, please, in 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. And Jess, do you have the answer, or we have it on the screen?
Yes, it's
Yes.
all of the above. So, like I said, the skin underneath that fur, that's black, that helps keep them warm throughout the year. But that thick, dense white fur that they have in the winter months is actually the densest of any animal. It's incredibly thick and keeps them incredibly warm. And communication, like you just saw with Jack and Sarah, like it's really important that they are recognized, you know, as having, he's very interested in Sophia's feet now.
He wants to chew my
Yeah, in having the right coat, which makes them an effective hunter, which makes them an attractive mate. But so yes, for this question, it's all of the above. It's really important for them.
Excellent. Thank you so much for that. And did you get the right answer in school? You can have another go at this next question. So what causes animals to change colour with the seasons? Is it A, the temperature? Is it B, daylight length? Is it C, environment? Or is it D, fashion? Call out the answer amongst yourselves. So you've got 10 seconds. So I wonder what you're thinking. Have a wee chat wherever you're watching, and you answer the question, please, in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Yeah, Jess, and what would that answer be?
Well, my answer might well be fashion, but for Arctic
Yeah.
foxes, it's daylight length. So depending on how many hours of daylight that they have in the Arctic, it's very, very little in winter. Some days there's no sunlight at all. And then as the seasons change and it goes through into spring and summer, there's more and more daylight. And that triggers something in the Arctic fox cells to say, right, the temperature's changing, I don't need this thick white coat, or I do need this thick white coat. And they'll then go through this several weeks, sometimes several months phase of switching between them. So you can actually see, hopefully they're together just now. Sarah's a little bit further ahead, or Jack actually is a little bit further ahead and coming out of his winter coat. And that's quite normal. Different Arctic foxes will do it at different times. There'll also be slightly different colours. So some foxes will be a bit more greyish, a bit more blue for more of the year, and some foxes will be much more sort of complete switch.
And as you said, if temperatures and things are changing thanks to climate change, that's going to confuse the
Absolutely.
creatures. Yeah. Excellent stuff. So next question is, how many native British species can change colour? Is it A2, is it B4, or is it C6? Again, it's about 20 seconds just to 20 seconds. I think I'm giving you extra this time.
Generous.
Yeah. So just call out the answer wherever you're watching, whoever you're here with. And let's have the answer in 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1.
So it is 4. It's 4 native species. So 4 species that live here in the UK change colour. I'm not going to tell you what they are just yet because we're going to come on to that shortly. But isn't it amazing that so many species have evolved, have adapted to have this as a survival strategy? You know, when we think about species changing colours, we think about chameleons, and it's just so amazing. And we've got animals right here living alongside us who are doing that to make the most to thrive within their environments. And that's what's so important when we're thinking about species protection, when we're thinking about conservation. We can't only think about one animal at a time. We have to think about how it all fits together, and about how animals need the habitats that they're living in, how that factors in with the environment, and the role then that we play within it. But yeah, there's 4 species that live in the same country as us that are changing colour.
Excellent stuff. And I think there is one more final question. Actually, no, we are going to move on to the native species. Can you
Yes.
identify these?
So if we head on, hopefully the first one isn't too much of a surprise. So you can see what they look like in the winter. You can see what they look like in the summer. This is a mountain hare. So you can see how well adapted they are to their environment, how well they blend in. They've still got those long ears. They've still got those big eyes, big nose for smelling out danger, but they change colour completely so that they're camouflaged in their environment, so they're less likely to be picked out by predators. So I'm up in the Cairngorms at the moment, and we have quite a few mountain hares around, and they are changing colour right now.
Excellent. Thank you so much. And I think we have another slide coming up.
Yeah, we should have a couple more. So
Excellent.
this,
Yeah, we've got
who
another one.
knows what this is? Give you a couple of seconds to answer. This is one of my favourite species, actually. This is a ptarmigan, and I love it. I think because I love dinosaurs. And ptarmigan, they are spelt just like pterodactyl. They've got a silent P at the beginning, which I think is just so mysterious. But you can see here how the two photos, again, you see how well the birds blend into their background. And they change colour. I'm always surprised every year about how quickly they change colour. I'll be up in the hills. Usually I hear them rather than see them. But you'll go up one week and you'll see them flying off usually as you're walking along one of the ridges, and they'll be brown, and you'll come back literally a couple of weeks later and there'll be this beautiful white with this really distinctive red eye patch as well. So this is a ptarmigan.
Fantastic. And it's amazing to think, as you said, this is happening right here, right now as well.
Yeah.
So exciting times. I think we have another slide to talk through. Yep, here we go.
Yeah, so this is a snow bunting. And interestingly here, you can see that actually their winter plumage, and that's what their feathers are called, the colours of their feathers, their winter plumage is more sort of a mottly brown, and it's their summer plumage that's more black and white. And scientists think that actually this is because when they are flying through the sky, they're better camouflage. That black and white sort of is either more attractive to mates or more effective as a sort of camouflage. They're moving in flocks. But this is a really interesting one. This is perhaps a little backwards than you'd think, having had a look at the others. We should have one more, I think.
One more slide, yeah.
Yes.
One more slide.
And I've saved my absolute top favourite till the end. So this is a stoat, and I'm lucky enough to actually have a few of these in my garden. And right now I've got one in the white colour morph and one brown, and I've called them Gertrude and Geraldine. So I think they're very, very smart. But stoats are absolutely incredible predators. They are pretty small, actually. If you're thinking about sort of the size of weasels or maybe pine martens, they're much, much bigger. Stoats are tiny but absolutely ferocious, and they can take down rabbits, which is their usually favorite food, up to sort of 3 times the size. And because they're so speedy and because they're so well camouflaged in their environment, it makes them absolutely fearsome predators. But they are an amazing part of their ecosystem. So I'd love to know how many of those you got right. Maybe pop it in the chat, or maybe keep track in your own class. But I think it's just so amazing that we have these animal magicians changing colour right in our own backyards.
And that's exactly what I was going to say. Some animals and creatures that possibly we've seen, but we've not really known what they are. So thank you so much for perhaps introducing us to them. But it is time now. We have a few minutes left of this session, and we can ask you some of our viewers' questions. So if you're ready for that, I think the first question should be coming up on the screen. And this is from West Primary School, Primary 4B. Are Arctic foxes related to other fox species?
Yes, they are. So they're what's known as a true fox species. They are part of the larger canid family. So that's the same sort of family that our dogs, our pet dogs, come from, but also wolves. And within that, there is a group known as true foxes. And their scientific name within the fox family is Vulpes, which is literally Latin for fox. And Arctic foxes, their scientific name is Vulpes lagopus. And I never remember scientific names, but that one sticks in my head because lagopus actually translates to rabbit-footed. So although they are related to other fox species, they are the only one that has fully furry feet. And lagopus, meaning rabbit-footed, that's because of the fluff on their paws. And that helps keep them warm. You know, when it's -40, you don't want any bit of skin exposed. But it also makes it much easier for them to grip on slippy ice and thick snow.
Great. Yeah, well done for remembering that name. That's
one of my only ones. Yeah.
Well done. Thank you so much for that question, West Primary. We have got another question coming through, and that is from St Mark's Primary, Primary 2. Hello to you all. So what is the difference between a polar Arctic fox and a blue Arctic fox?
So I gave away this answer a little bit earlier, and actually this is a great question. Like you saw in some of those other pictures, when the animals change colour, they do sometimes look like completely different species, but actually they're exactly the same. The only difference between the two is the time of year, really. And like you can see with Jack and Sarah, like I said, they are different colours. They aren't all completely sort of grey or blue and then completely white. There is a sort of scale. And so the only difference between a polar Arctic fox and a blue Arctic fox, it's just different colour morphs, and it'll be different times of the year. There are, of course, some individuals who don't change colour so completely, and we're all a little bit different. That's down to our genetics. And those individuals might not be super well suited to the really deep snowy conditions within the middle of the Arctic, but scientists think that actually more coastal, so populations that live more along the sea, it might not be as important for them to go completely white because it doesn't get as kind of deeply snowy or deeply icy. So it might be that over the next sort of few centuries, few thousand years, that those individuals, those populations living along the sea, maybe there will be a difference, but at the moment it's the same species, just different times a year.
Excellent. Thank you so much for that. And we can see one of them getting stuck into breakfast there as
Yes.
well. Yep.
You can
So
see
this
how
is really
clever they are, how amazing they are at problem solving.
Oh, absolutely, getting stuck in there.
Yeah,
So
go on,
this
Jack.
this question is coming to us from Amanda. How can you tell the difference between male and female Arctic foxes, and how long do they live for? That's from Amanda, but it's also from Emily and Christina.
Oh, hi, Emily and Christina. And that's a great question. You can't really tell the difference between male and female Arctic foxes from a distance. Sorry. You can tell the difference between individuals, and I'm going to head over to Sophia so she can tell you how she tells the difference between Jack and Sarah. Speak into this microphone here so you get them.
So you can see it looking at Jack and Sarah. Jack's kind of got a kind of more greyish kind of face to him and legs. So we can tell that from him. He's also a lot younger than Sarah, so he's only about a year old at the moment. So he's still a bit smaller than Sarah. But it's not always down to how they look with our animals. It's also with behaviour. So Jack, he's very curious of us, and he's very confident, and he comes a lot closer to us. And so that's quite often a way that we can tell them animals apart too, is just from their temperament. And Sarah's a little bit more shy and a little bit more cautious as well.
Yeah, thank you so much. And that second part of the question, how long do they live? In the wild, life in the wild's really tough. You know, you've got to be really healthy, especially when you're needing to eat so many small mammals or small birds. So in the wild, they might only live for a couple of years. But in captivity, they might live to sort of low teens, similar really to kind of our pet dogs.
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you for that. And as I said, I think we can all see how confident and playful Jack is. So
yes.
Excellent link to that question. Thank you so much. We have another question coming up. And again, this is from West Primary School, Primary 4A. How did the foxes get from the Arctic to the wildlife park?
That is such a good question, and actually one that doesn't just apply to Arctic foxes really, but it is now very, very unusual, really, really rare, and that any animal would be taken from the wild and brought to a zoo. That maybe is how things used to happen, but that's really not what we like to do anymore. Sarah actually was born right here, so she has not had far to travel at all. And Jack came from a zoo in Germany. He arrived here last October, and like a lot of our animals, we are part of a really extensive network of zoos and conservation breeding programs. So we have partners not only around Scotland, not only around the UK, actually not only around Europe, but around the world, where we're working together with other zoos and other organisations to match up our animals based on their health, based on their behaviour, based on their genetics. So most of the animals within Highland Wildlife Park come from other zoos, and they've been carefully paired together, not only for their health and for the health of their babies, but for the future health of their species.
And I think that's really important to use the word conservation to keep the biodiversity, to keep our planet going. So really important work. So thank you for that question. And this is the last question that we have time for. And it's just coming through just now. Again, West Primary School, Primary 4B. We mentioned conservation there, and they would like to know, are Arctic foxes endangered?
That is a really interesting question because you might have heard of the IUCN, which is the International Union for the Conservation of Nature. If you're at zoos or if you're looking up information about animal populations online, you'll often see like a little status about that species, usually in a red bubble, and it'll go from extinct and extinct in the wild right down to least concern. And actually, Arctic foxes are that least concern status. In the wild, there's probably about 120,000 of them globally. But that doesn't mean that we can kind of rest easy. Like I mentioned about climate change, things can happen quickly, and the environment that Arctic foxes need is changing now, and it's changing rapidly. And not only as a sort of overview is their environment becoming more threatened, but actually those 120,000 aren't all living happily in one connected population. The population is what we call fragmented. There's little populations as satellites around, and in some instances where, like in Sweden and Finland, they may have been widespread before, there's actually only a couple of hundred. So like we just spoke there about how important it is to maintain diversity within populations, those fragmented populations are endangered. For Arctic foxes, their main threats, it is climate change. Historically though, because their fur is so dense and it's so effective at keeping them warm and therefore keeping people warm, they were hunted and they were used extensively in the fur trade. That now is being managed much more carefully and is much more sustainable. So it's not really a threat that's pushing them to the brink of extinction, but it's definitely something that we need to be mindful of when we're so kind of out of control with keeping on top of global warming, and that really knowing what the impacts of that might be for species like the Arctic fox. It's really important that we don't wait for species to move off that least concern sort of label, and we start acting to help them now. So like I mentioned before, there's lots of things that all of us can do within our everyday lives to make a difference for not only species like Arctic foxes and polar bears in the Arctic, but for like the stoats and ptarmigans and mountain hares right here with us. So all of that, cutting down on your emissions, eating more locally grown or made food, cutting down on car journeys or switching off the lights or putting on that extra jumper before turning on the heating, all of that will really make a difference to species like Arctic foxes and species that we live alongside here.
Yeah, excellent stuff. And I think that's a really important note to end on, that we can all have an impact on creatures like the foxes and some of the wildlife you've mentioned. So thank you for giving us some hints as well. Things like turning lights off, putting jumpers on can really affect all the creatures we have on this planet. So thank you so much to all of you up at the Highland Wildlife Park. Thank you to
You're
Jack
so
and
welcome.
Sarah.
Yes,
it was really
I'll pass that on.
lovely to see them so playful. Thank you to all of you for joining us either live or for streaming this. We will have a short survey coming up. If you get a chance to click on that survey, answer the questions, you can help to shape future sessions like the one we've just had. Thank you again to all of you up at the Highland Wildlife Park. If you find that you're still curious, please log on to our website, which is curiousabout.glasgowsciencecentre.org, where you can find out more information about sessions like this, the learning festivals that we're running today, and also lots of interactive activities from previous sessions. One more thank you to you all again. Thank you for all of you watching at home, and thanks for joining us here at Glasgow Science Centre for Curious About Live.
Thank you.
Thanks. Bye.